I said, you go with my blessing, but if Brabham comes back to Formula One, you're coming back. By the third race, the team ran out of money. It's the car I'm most proud of. So when Nelson signed the contract and left, Patrick came into the office, he said, stop everything.
You were born in Argentina, over 11,000 kilometers from here. You started your racing ambitions with slot car racing, then go-karts. How does a young Sergio go from that in Argentina to being here in the United Kingdom, having designed these Formula One cars?
Well, it's just making my dream, my childhood dream, reality. Probably when you're young, you are not conscious of the end of the road, but you unconsciously you know when you want to do what you want to do, and you just follow the road, make all the efforts that you need to make the sacrifices that you need to make, and pursue your dream. And I am absolutely fortunate and privileged that I managed to fulfill my dream of designing Formula One cars, and I spent a long, long time in Formula One. Came to live in this country, will be on December 18th, will be 46 years, and managed to do it. So I consider myself absolutely fortunate.
Let's look into these Formula One cars. You engineered first at, well, amongst other teams, Ram, and then you worked at Williams, where you were the chief engineer for a new number of cars, including the FW11.
Yes, I was part of the engineering group at the FW11, together with Enrique Scalabroni. We designed the car. We were, I think, 7 or 8 people there, including Patrick and Frank Derny. And we designed and built the whole thing in, I don't know, 5 months or something like that, including wind tunnel testing and so on. I was in charge of designing the monocoque and the front suspension. That was my part of the car. And then engineering at the racetracks with Nigel Mansell. So in those days, we have to do both jobs.
You worked in the factory during the winter, and then during the summer,
exactly.
You traveled as a race engineer.
Travel as a race engineer to go all the testing and the racing and so on.
Do you have any funny memories from Nigel Mansell?
See, a lot. Too funny to mention.
Oh. Then the story says that you left Williams to go to Brabham.
Correct.
Reportedly, Bernie Ecclestone went to speak to Frank Williams in the hospital to ask him permission to take you.
That's what they say. So I think something like that happened, yes. Yes, I mean, in '86, also Frank Williams had the accident in Paul Ricard. We were testing there. And he was in hospital for the whole year. The situation without Frank, the situation at Williams was very difficult. Patrick had a very hard job because not only leading the technical side, he had to actually run the team and deal with all the politics and whatever. So the ambience there changed quite a lot. I had the opportunity to go to Brabham because it was the year when they had the BT55, the flat car. Gordon already decided to leave Brabham. Bernie commissioned us to design and build that car for the lie-down end, initially for the upright engine. And we designed that car. We were like a triumvirate of people. It was David North, who has been Gordon Murray's right-hand man, a brilliant designer, who moved to McLaren afterwards with Gordon, and John Baldwin, another great engineer. So we were the three of us responsible for the concept of the BT56, and then we had another 3 or 4 engineers helping us to do all the design components and so on of that car. We designed the BT57 with a BMW engine. He had his own anecdotes there because the lie-down engine, which the BT55 used, had a problem with the oil scavenge because of the position. So we, the engineers, we were pushing to have the upright engine, go back to the upright engine. And we designed the BT56, we designed it for an upright engine. But at the last minute, when we were actually laying down the composite chassis, the first one, Bernie came into the office that BMW would not give us the upright engine. We had to have the lie-down engine because that's what we asked a year earlier. So very political. So we have to open the mold, modify the rear bulkhead, so because the lie-down engine had a different kind of arrangement, and design and attachment there. So all happened within a week when we'd already lined the carbon for the first monocoque. So we ran the whole 86 with 87, we ran with the lie-down engine, and a modified Weissman gearbox.
At Brabham, you worked with Bernie Ecclestone. How was your first meeting with him, and how was it working with him?
It was very interesting working with him. I never forget the first interview. He asked me what I did. He already knew what I did at Williams. He knew everything, but he asked me anyway. And then he said, well, how much were you earning at Williams? I told him. He said, well, you're going to be earning the same here. So don't think that you come in here as a promotion. My promotion was to go to a group of leading designer, but the salary was the same. Yeah. And in those days, well, you never argue with him. He says, yes is yes. If he would have asked me to pay for it, probably I would have paid for it as well. So nice stories. And it was great working with him. I learned a hell of a lot, obviously. And I was very fortunate to working with brilliant people in the 1980s and 90s. Before going into Formula One, I worked at Rolt with Ron Toranak. Then at Ram with Gustav Brunner, then at Williams with Patrick Head, then at Brabham for a short while with Gordon Murray, and so on. So, like Isaac Newton said, I managed to see further because I stood in the shoulders of giants, and that is something which is part of my fortune, part of that privilege life I managed to build.
As the Brabham team reached its end of its life, you went through a number of teams, which is a bit interesting story. Tell us a bit more about that era.
Yes, when Brabham, well, after the BT56, Bernie Ecclestone decided that he needed to get rid of the team, sell the team, because he was running Formula One, and it was a conflict of interest. So all the other team owners said, you cannot run your own team and run the whole of Formula One. It's a conflict of interest. So he sold initially to Alfa Romeo, the Fiat group. And the idea was to build a pro car, which was an Alfa Romeo 164 with a Formula One chassis, Formula One engine and gearbox. I didn't want to do that. I was young, I was ambitious, Formula One was my dream, and I told him so. And strangely enough, about a week later, I got a phone call from Giampaolo Dallara offering me to go to Italy to design his first Formula One car for Scuderia Italia. I went to Italy, met with Dallara. He told me what was the job at hand, how many people I was going to have, what resources I was going to have. Not many. Then I came back to England, went to see Bernie and told him, and Bernie, he probably he knew already, because didn't show any surprise. I said, you go with my blessing, but if Brabham comes back to Formula One, you're coming back. So I thought, okay, that's fine. And then we went to Italy, packed the house. My daughter was just born in December 1987, and I started at Dallara at Christmas 1987, 10 days later. So my wife stayed in England for 2 months, until the baby was old enough to be able to fly. Then she moved to Italy, and we lived the whole year there. And it was a fantastic experience working for Dallara, fantastic man, another giant of motorsport that I had the fortune to stood on his shoulders. And so, yeah, it was a great experience. The Scuderia Italia people are brilliant. Still my friends today. But at the end of that year, Bernie decided that Brabham was going to come back to Formula One. So around Jerez, the Spanish Grand Prix, he called me to his motorhome and told me so. And he said, you promise you're coming back. So that was it. So 1 year in Italy, coming back. My wife was crying because she loved Italy. So she didn't want to come back to England. But anyway, my career was sort of my aim, and that was the most important thing. So we came back to England. And then we stayed at Brabham for another 3 years until Brabham finally closed down, because having Bernie sort of sold the interest of the team, we didn't have the resources anymore, the financial resources. Like having Bernie behind you is one thing, having a private owner is not the same. So eventually the team collapsed because of lack of resources, lack of money, basically. So at the end of '91, the team was sort of decided, the owners of the team, a Japanese consortium, decided to, well, basically the Brabham factory was bought by Yamaha. Yamaha was our engine supplier. So basically the team have to move out. And they moved the team to Milton Keynes. I didn't want to go to Milton Keynes, so I resigned, and so did the whole drawing office. And about 2 weeks later, John McDonald, who was the team manager of Brabham at the time, and he has been my team manager and team owner at RAM, he's the one who gave me my first job in Formula One, called me. And he said, Sergio, there is these people at Fondmetal who needs to build a car for next year. I said, next year what, 93? No, 92. This was December 91. And he said, they're looking for someone because they closed in the Fondmet office in Bicester with Robin Hurd, and they need someone to design the car. And I recommended you. So off I went to Italy, discussions, contracts, whatever. By December the 15th, 91, we signed a contract. Between December the 15th and January the 1st, I had to rent an office, buy computer systems for CAD, because we were using CAD already, had to buy all drawing boards and furniture and hire people. Most of the drawing office from Brabham came with me, the people that were with me at Brabham. We rented the wind tunnel from Yamaha, so basically we carry on working with the Brabham wind tunnel, which is what we knew, because we developed all the Brabhams there. The aerodynamicist was my aerodynamicist at Brabham, Hans Fouché. And so the first 2 weeks of January, we had to adapt the HB engine to the old Fondmetal, because our car wasn't going to be ready until June, at least, or May. So in my plan, I had 4 months to design and build the car. That was the plan, and we did it. So 2 weeks to modify the old one, and from January the 15th until, I think it was May, middle of May, when we tested the car for the first time at Fiorano. And that included wind tunnel testing, 2 wind tunnel models, all the research that we did in the wind tunnel. I mean, that included everything in 4 months. And my company, Astauto, which is what today I have, we were 10 people. That included my secretary, the model maker, the buyer, and the production manager. So designing the car, we were 6 people. And we did it in 4 months. So that's why when people ask me which of all the cars that I design I feel more proud of, I always say the Fondmetal. Because we had no influence, we had no legacy, we had to start from scratch. And I made a decision to make mechanically the car simpler than the Brabham BT61, because the BT61 had a monoshock, had a very intricate central damper, and it had a semi-active front suspension. But we decided not to carry that into the Fondmetal because the team was small, lower resources, the team in Italy, we in England. So the main decision was, no, we're going to do mechanically conventional. So we put all our effort on the aerodynamics. So the car was very innovative from the aerodynamic point of view. And that's sort of the biggest pride in that project.
You told me a story of being on the grid in Spa of 1992, and one of the greatest in F1, Patrick Head, the co-founder, engineering director of Williams, came to speak to you.
Yes, we all had the habit of walking the pit lane to look at other people's cars because it was the chance you take the engine cover off and people can look. So, and Patrick came and he looked at me and he said, Sergio, well done, man. This is the only car I can learn something from. And I nearly dropped dead, you know. Patrick has been my boss at Williams, so he knew me from many, many years. And for him to tell me that, it was just like, yeah, that's it. I don't want any more compliments.
Something that was very interesting about this car is you said 100% of the components were outsourced.
Yes.
They were manufactured by other companies.
Yes.
Something that was pioneered in Formula One by this car.
Well, yes, because Formula One, obviously, like today, everybody has to build his own car. So if you build a Formula One team, the first thing you build is a drawing office in a port cabin and a factory. You buy the machines, you machine your components, you make your molds, you build your car. We didn't have that. See, I mean, Formula One always outsourced some of the building of the car, like saying some machining outside, some composite outside, but I would say 10% of the car, 15% of the car, everything else is made in-house. I mean, the Benetton was the extreme where 100% of the car was made in-house. With the Fondmetal, it was completely the opposite. Fondmetal didn't have a factory, only had a workshop in Italy, just to run the car. I didn't have a factory. The Brabham factory belongs to Yamaha, so the only thing we could use was the wind tunnel, and they rented for us the race shop and the model shop. So we ran our aerodynamic program from the Brabham old building and from the Brabham wind tunnel. And we built the mock-up of the first car in the race shop of what used to be Brabham, because it's just around the corner with our office in Tolworth. But to manufacture all the components, we have to outsource, and we outsource absolutely everything. Every nut, bolt, composite piece, bodywork, chassis, everything. Gearbox, everything.
You tell the story of having two vans running around the United Kingdom.
Yeah, we had two vans. We had a transit van and a escort van. And we had, I forgot about Peter, the run-around chauffeur or driver. And he was running around the country with those vans, collecting bits, taking them from the manufacturer to an office in Bicester that was doing all our quality control, because I wouldn't receive any component without a quality control certificate. That was one of the main sort of policies that I ran. I mean, the production manager and the buyer, between them, they have to come to me always with 3 quotes. Not one, 3 quotes. So they have to go to the market and get to manufacture the uprights, go to 3 people, and I choose which one was going to manufacture the components. Sometimes it was the cheapest, sometimes it was the best, but they always have to have, I had those policies installed at the time. And every component went to this office in Bicester, John Paniston. They did the inspection, and then the components came to the office in boxes with a certificate. And then we go and ship them to Italy, every component. Then when the whole design and build was finished, I went to Italy for probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks with 3 of my old Brabham mechanics. And we helped the mechanics, the Italian mechanics there, to build the cars and get them ready for testing. So it was a hell of an adventure.
Going on to the racing, this car was raced on a relatively small budget, which...
Very small, very small. I mean, the team, we had the first race in Canada, which was June. By the 3rd race, the team ran out of money, because the sponsor that they promised us and they promised me and they said they were going to have didn't turn up. So they didn't have the sponsor. And they stopped paying bills as early as July. So go to Monza 3 months later, and we haven't been paid for 3 months. Not us, not the suppliers, no one. Cosworth, no one. So Monza was the last race. And that's where the story of this car, the GR02 that you saw last week, that car was new for Hungary, for Eric. So he did 2 races and then Monza, but Monza didn't start because the clutch broke on the start. And as the car finished, or let's say was taken out of the grid at Monza, went into the living room of this Italian gentleman and stayed there until 2020, when Eric and his partner bought the car. So it was never touched, it was in his living room.
You tell interesting stories from racing with very limited funds. You said Williams, for example, would use 60 floors for a season.
Yes, well, the floors were consumables because we were dragging the floor on the track. So you go qualify, you take the floor, throw it away, put a new one for the race. Brabham, and as I said, Williams that year used 60 floors. We had 3. So the Tarquini's floor, Tarquini's car, the one that is at the Fondmetal factory now, that was repair over repair over repair. Eric's car, because it was brand new, it had only 2 races, I think we had to repair it only once. And we had 3 floors, that's all, because there was no more money. It's more. We wanted to build 4 cars. The 4th monocoque stayed in the reception of Advanced Composite for many years. It was never delivered because it was never paid.
The car continues to be one of the most beautiful modern F1 cars. How do you feel about its look, its aesthetics?
I mean, as I said, it's the car I'm most proud of. It wasn't successful because circumstances, budget, resources were not there. The car only did 7 races in '92, didn't finish the season. But the whole process of first of all, setting up my company, hiring people, running a company, and the whole process of building that car is what filled me with pride. Because aerodynamically had a lot of innovations that took many, many years for other Formula One cars to have. One of the reasons I always, with a smile I said, because that car never won a race, no one really looked at it to copy it. But it had one concept that it was used at Ferrari 10 years later in 2002. It was the side channels, which is every single car now has. So you see the floor, the bodywork comes in, and then is the side pod. That Fondmetal had that. A very rudimentary channel, but that's what we had. In fact, the radiators were very strange radiators, very unique for the time. I mean, we had radiators from Sican in France, and it's the first time they had to do a radiator which had like a cutout to allow the aerodynamics. So there were innovations there. There were innovations on the front wing. At that time, the front wings of Formula One cars were still 2D, so 2-dimensional. Ours was 3-dimensional. It had all these deflections and going into the monocoque. The monocoque had a very narrow, pointy nose to allow more area for the center of the wing. The wing sort of left like a hole in the middle for the air to go clean into the underwing, and then go and separate into the radiator. So we had a lot of those kind of innovations, and all that came because the aerodynamicist Hans Fouché, very smart guy, very clever guy. I still miss him today. He decided to go back to South Africa at the end of '92. And he developed this research in the wind tunnel that, like you see today in Formula One cars when they go to Barcelona for the first test, that have this array of pitot tubes behind the front wheel, behind the rear wheels to measure the flow and to just to see what the air is doing. Well, we did that in the wind tunnel. We had a frame of pitot tubes, all held with elastic bands, and we were moving this frame along the car and behind the car to see what air was doing. Today, in this tunnel, we do it with a PIV system, which is basically laser with the gas and the molecules of gas. The car goes through and it shows all the vortices, and you can actually measure all that in one go without the interference of any instrumentation. So, but this was 33 years ago.
you retain all of the design paperwork, all of the design documents from the Fondmetal.
Yes,
And
yes.
you-
All the research we did is all belongs to my company. So, yeah.
And you invite if the new owner is interested.
Yes, I mean, when they bought the car from Italy, I helped them with information, and I have setups, and I have obviously the aerodynamic information. If they wanted to run the car, with Eric, we are very good friends, and we always talk to each other and joke with each other that when he goes racing with that car, I will be his race engineer. Yeah, and hopefully that will happen in the future, as well as we would love to test that car here, to measure that car, and then to compare with what we measured 33 years ago in the wind tunnel. It would be fantastic because I still have all the documentation. I have all the documents with the vortices and the velocities and pressure from those days along the whole car. It will be very interesting to go that car through the PIV and then compare with what we did 33 years ago in a 30% wind tunnel.
Eric van der Poel said that car was one of the most comfortable Formula One cars he sat in. You designed that car for Andrea Chiesa and Gabriele Tarquini. How was it designing for the three drivers? Were they all similar, or were there any challenges?
Yeah, they were similar, and it was not much different than what I've done before with Brabham or Williams. I mean, the driver position was a fairly light down position. In a way, like the Brabham BT55. And the anecdote here, going back, when Nelson Piquet, I was working at Williams, Nelson Piquet came to sign the contract at Williams. We were designing a car that it was going to be a development of FW10 with a very upright seating position. And Nelson told Patrick Head about the Brabham BT55 and the lie down position. So when Nelson signed the contract and left, Patrick came into the office. He said, "Stop everything. We're starting from scratch." And that's why the FW11 have a very similar seating position than the 55. Was much lower. The driver was much lower, lie down. And then I carry on with that driving position into the Brabham BT56, to the Dallara, the last three Brabhams, the Fondmetal, always kept sort of the same kind of driving position. And one of the innovations on the construction of the car, which I started with the Brabham BT60, was that the seat of the driver was a monocoque within the monocoque. So it was the tank bulkhead, the seat, the side boxes to reinforce the chassis, and the dash bulkhead was one component that have to go through the floor and then bonded inside, a chassis within a chassis. So the Brabham BT60 was built like that, and the Fondmetal was built like that. And then, to a certain extent, the Sauber in 2001 was built like that.
In your opinion, the Fondmetal, why would a collector want that car? What does it represent to you?
Well, to me, it represents my life. I mean, it's my pride and joy. As I said, I consider that probably my best design, not the most successful. The most successful, obviously, was FW11, and the second most successful was the Sauber. The Sauber had a lot of innovations, but the real innovative Sauber was going to be the 2002 Sauber, but that didn't happen. Not under my watch. And that car probably would have matched the Fondmetal in terms of innovation 10 years later. But at the time we did the Fondmetal in '92, that car was, if it would have been on a team with resources and just with the resources to go testing, at least to go testing. We never went testing. I mean, only once. You know, to have the spares, to have the resources that you need to be successful, that car would have been very successful.
Now, tell us about this location. We're in Catesby Tunnel near Daventry. It's a Victorian tunnel that's now a motorsport testing facility. Tell us about this.
Motorsport and automotive. I mean, back in 2007, we founded Total Sim with my partner Rob Lewis and all the engineers that work with us. We are all partners on this group. And we grow from 6 people to around now the group, now is a group, total sim, and we are about 50 employees or 60, something like that. We discovered what Chip Ganassi was doing in the States. Total Sim developed the Aston Martin, the Lola Aston Martin, and they went to the States testing in the Chip Ganassi wind tunnel, which is also a railway tunnel. It's much shorter than this, smaller, but still it's a testing facility which is exclusively used by the Chip Ganassi team and by Honda. For some relationship that ProDrive or Aston Martin had, they managed to take the car there, and Rob came back. This is the future. We need to have something like that. And it took a few years for Rob to find this venue, this tunnel. One day he came to the office, we had the board of directors meeting, and he said, "I found the tunnel," and that was it. So the story started there. It was inaugurated in 2021, I think, if I'm not wrong. 21 was finished. In 22, we had the opening day, and that day we had the good fortune that Peter Wright came to the inauguration of the tunnel to cut the brand, and sadly he passed away last week. So we're very saddened that he's not here. But he came here with the Lotus 79 from Classic Team Lotus, and they ran the car in the tunnel for the first time. So, and it took there from 22. Now we are in 25. So it's 3-4 years, and we're building it up. We're making improvements. We're getting approval for WLTC testing for road cars, for production cars. And we are getting more and more certifications to do racing cars and to sort of facilitate more testing. The PIV system, which is what I mentioned earlier, is the latest adding of technology to this tunnel, and that would allow us to test the car and then see what the wake is behind the car. So it's an ideal tool to tune the regulations so we can have closer racing, which is the aim of the regulations, the Formula One regulations for 2022 and the regulations for 2026. It's always trying to shorten that to allow close racing. Without our system here is the ideal tool to actually test and maintain that situation. Because one of the things that happened with the 2022 regulations is that in 4 years, that distance has increased because the cars improve aerodynamically, and when you improve the downforce, you increase the wake behind. It gets longer, so it gets more difficult to overtake. So that's something that it is an ambition of us to be able to use our facilities to improve on that as well.
The Fondmetal GR02 that we are selling, chassis number 3, it's a running, fully complete car that you've always wanted to be more involved with.
Yes, I mean, that car ran for the first time at Spa in 2021 with Eric driving in the rain, and it's amazing the speed he was doing in that car. After 28 years, that car never ran, and he wasn't missing a gear. He was pushing Eau Rouge up full speed. I mean, it was amazing. So our ambition with Eric is to actually make that car run in the historic Formula One races. So I'm hoping that whoever buys that car brings it back to life. That car needs to breathe, needs to run. Yeah, it's not good to be sitting just in a museum. Yeah, it's a living creature. And the dream with Eric was like, we always joke, I say, you drive it, I do your race engineering. So it will bring us back to those 33 years ago, back in '92, when we had so much fun together.
It's sold with a complete spares package, and if we need to make any new components, we still have the drawings.
Absolutely, absolutely. We got everything. We got all the setups, we got all the aerodynamic studies that we would love to compare with running it here. We have all the drawings if we need to build. is a running car, and it would be lovely to see it, I don't know, see the Goodwood going up the hill or racing in the historic Formula One races. I got a few of my Brabhams racing there as well, so it would be nice to see them all together.